apologies for that. Okay. Let's see here if I put this over here. Okay. Okay. So welcome everyone. So I want to welcome everyone to the digital measures training. I've just sent you these links in the chat. So this will get you into the digital measures website, and we'll talk a lot more about that in the next hour or so to get you up and running. And as I mentioned, I've also shared all these slides so that you can follow along at your own pace as we go. So I can see all of you here. Has anybody had a hard time getting into digital measures? Just sort of flag me down or say something. You're going to use your regular Trinity username and password. But we'll sort of start with that. Okay, so, but we'll get to that in a second. I just wanted to give people a chance to do that as we're settling in. Okay, let's see here. So I'm really delighted to welcome all of you to the training, to what we're calling Pilot 2.0. So this is the second year of our pilot with digital measures. So all of you coming in for the first time, you really have the benefit of all the learning we did last year, and that we've already made some changes, and I think we've smoothed some things out. My name is Lisa Josinski, and I'm the Special Assistant to the Vice President for Academic Affairs. And I'm really the point person on this project from an administration standpoint. And in just a few minutes, I'll be joined with my amazing colleague, Jess Bardo from ITS. Many of you have gotten to know Jess really well over the last year for her work and support with Zoom. She's having a few internet issues right now. So as soon as her home internet issues are resolved, she'll join us in the training. And I will also just wish you kind of hearty hello to everyone who's just watching this on their own time. Hopefully what we offer in the next hour will be helpful to you, and you can manage it on your own time and on your own pace. So before I kind of launch into the training itself, I just want to talk a little bit about who's participating in digital measures this year. So I want to welcome the departments of computer science, healthcare administration, engineering science, and the library. All of you will be using the software for the first time. And you'll be joining the folks who were in the first cohort of the program. So this was physics and astronomy, sociology and anthropology, and all three departments in the School of Business. And so I want to say just sort of who participates in digital measures. It's a tool for all full-time faculty who would ordinarily complete a SPA. So part-time faculty and staff are not out of this process, are not part of this process. And also, I just wanted to say sort of explicitly which departments were participating, because if you mention this to a colleague in another department and they look at you with a puzzled look, it's because we're sort of bringing departments on a couple every year and that they probably won't know what you're talking about. But I just want to assure you that you're in the right place. And also there's a whole group of faculty colleagues who are not part of this process. My goal is that you'll really leave here today having a clear understanding what this tool is and why we're using it. But also on a very practical standpoint, you'll kind of know exactly what information you'll need to put into the system so that you can complete your faculty evaluation materials. And I'll also be able to identify for you how to complete your your SPA through this product this year. Nothing has changed in terms of the timeline. SPAs are still due on January 20th, 2021. It's just that this process is a little bit more streamlined and automated, but it's going to be very similar. We also have a bunch of help and support resources that you can access in addition to the training today, and I'll be sure to tell you about those before we finish. I think as we dive in, I thought I would just start out and tell you a little bit about what Digital Measures is as a product. It's an online faculty database. It's a pretty standard tool that's used by many colleges and universities across the country, but we have made some modifications so that it makes the most sense for what we do at Trinity. And the line that Digital Measures uses is enter your data once and it lives forever. And basically, we see that the advantage of using a tool like this is that allows us to get information from faculty and frankly, to use it in a much more efficient way than we currently are. So right now, I know you turn in your SPAs annually, you turn in a CV, but all of that is essentially, even though it's digital, it's still kind of paper-based, right? There's no way to sort of think about bigger aggregate things. But as I'll show you today, the way that Digital Measures works is that once faculty put their information in, it can be extracted really to make some processes a lot more efficient. So, you've seen a lot of emails in the last 24 hours about Impact Magazine. You can imagine that when all faculty are in this, we have a much more complete record of like what faculty achievement looks like, and we could pull it out directly as opposed to sending another email. There's also some really smart ways to integrate what happens in Digital Measures with our university websites, so we can keep things really kind of current and up to date, such as publications or research grants or any other information. I'd say that we're still kind of at a pretty early stage with this as an institution. So I don't know exactly how else we might be using it, but a tool like this can help us answer questions like how many faculty are involving undergraduates in their research? It's a question, right? Is faculty productivity on a quantitative level, is that going up or is it going down or staying the same? There's ways in which this can, I think, just be a really useful tool to us as an institution. But we're still figuring that out. I'd say also that there's some really great advantages for programs that have external review or external accreditation. Digital Measures already has some great templates for both ABET and AACSB. So there's some kind of ready-made reports that I think will make life very easy for departments like engineering science and the School of Business that will just help them gather data much more quickly, and it can be a dynamic process. So that's sort of what the tool is. And I think once I show it to you, and you might already be kind of noodling around with it in your own windows, you'll kind of just get a better sense of what it looks like and what that could be. So when you log into Digital Measures, you'll see a screen that looks an awful lot like this, right? So you have these kind of big, bold categories that are in black, and below it, you'll see that there are all of these hyperlinks that take you to different screens of information. And you might already be sort of playing with that, and that's fine. I know you can listen and play at the same time. But I'll just tell you a couple of things about that before we start to kind of get our hands dirty together. The first is that Digital Measures has the capacity to track a lot of different data and information. And we know that not every field on that kind of table of contents will apply to all faculty members, right? So while it's not impossible that somebody in the Department of Physics or Engineering Science might have a, I don't know, an exhibit or a performance, right? We know that that's the kind of field that's going to be really important for somebody in music, right? Maybe you had a patent application this year, maybe you didn't, right? But just sort of keep in mind that sort of everybody sees everything because you have a lot of freedom to kind of pick and choose what you upload. Even, for example, I know we have librarians with us today. A lot of your work looks different, right? And it may not look like traditional publications or presentations or even, teaching. just keep in mind that there's sort of more here because it tries to kind of speak to everyone across different disciplines. Second, we're really bringing folks on board, and we're trying to limit the scope of sort of how much information you could add to this system. We're not asking you to take everything that's on your CV and drop it into the digital measure system. We really want you to focus on things from the last year, right? So at Trinity, we do annual evaluations. So if it happened in 2020, we're going to ask that you put that into your digital measures site. And we're really doing that in a way to kind of just sort of help you focus on what's immediately needed for evaluation. But everything you put into the system this year will kind of be there moving forward. But at least for right now, there's no expectation that you have to go back and enter everything in. The third thing I'll say is that very few of you are starting with a blank slate. So to get you started on this process, as the system administrator, I've already uploaded some data on your behalf so that anything we had in our files and our records and our other university databases, I tried to put that into the system already. So for example, when you log into like your name and your contact information, you'll see things like your department listed. But I also went through and I uploaded things like your teaching records. So I worked with the folks in ITS to pull things right out of Colleague and to upload any courses you taught in the last year, those enrollments, and things like that. So there's some stuff already there, but it's probably imperfect and it's probably spotty. And we'll sort of talk about how you can make sure that everything is accurate and correct. Okay, so that's just the main screen. When you kind of log into digital measures, that's what you should be seeing. Let me get to the next screen. So what I thought I would do is I would sort of get us started today with a little hands-on activity. And I thought we'd just get some collective practice of using digital measures and entering in some new piece of data, just so you get a sense of just sort of what this looks like and how it might work. In just a second, I'm going to ask for a willing volunteer. So if you're feeling generous and you don't mind kind of learning in front of other people, I'll be asking for a volunteer in just a second. And I think it makes most sense to kind of start with something brand new. So really, if you have any idea of something from the last year that was a form of service, right? I don't know any of that. So there's none of that in your systems already. If you gave a presentation, we might hold off on publications just for 1 second. But if you received an award or an honor, so if anybody has a form of service, a presentation, or an award or an honor, I'm gonna kind of invite you to take over the comm for a second. And let's see here. So I'll stop sharing my screen. Do we have any volunteers? Anyone who's willing to do this? You don't have to be shy. I promise. Other people learn best when they get to watch someone else. So do I have any volunteers?
Yeah, I'll go. I've got, I gotta find where it was.
That's fine, Kevin. So if it's okay, I'm gonna make it possible for you to share your screen. And when you're ready to do that, you'll be able to. Great, I'll make you a co-host. That should let you share. And we're gonna thank Kevin for his bravery. And maybe others will even be inspired to follow. Great.
Okay, so I had to find the event.
Excellent.
So this was a Purdue alumni thing. They had us go and talk about teaching-oriented colleges to education graduate students in engineering at Purdue.
Fantastic. And it looks like it was on October 13th, right?
On October 13th, yes.
Great.
So let me go over to digital
yeah.
measure.
Sorry, I know there's a lot of toggling today. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's not scholarship research presentation. It would be a service presentation. So,
Great.
oh, there it is.
Yep.
So is that professional or community?
You know, this is the thing. I want to be really clear. We've always let faculty self-classify those activities themselves. So we in kind of academic affairs are pretty agnostic. We know that every department might classify that differently. I personally, it sounded like professional service. So I think that's a great choice, but you get to use your own judgment and guidance about like where to stick those things.
Okay. Position or role. Okay. So I guess I was a speaker or a panelist.
Yeah. Is that an option? So it sounds like you're an other. That's a perfect, this is a great example, right?
Okay. It's other. Explanation of other.
Great.
Country. I'm like, I don't know what county it is.
Yeah. Great. And you can ignore, everyone in this room can ignore anything that says AACSB. That's only for the School of Business. So if you're not in the School of Business, ignore it. Yeah. And I'll say, as Kevin's typing, I also just want to remind everyone, you can always go back and revise or edit these entries. So yeah, so it's not permanent, right? You might get started and you might want to add something later, or you might sort of remember something, right? Maybe you don't remember the town that the conference was in and you need to go back and look it up. It's fine to take that in iterative phases.
Okay, so you enter the end date. So,
yep.
You remember what that was?
It was the 13th.
13th? Your memory's better than mine.
All right.
Good.
I didn't have to remember anything else. Excellent.
That's it, right? Save.
Let's see if that works. Great. Fantastic. So can we give Kevin a round of applause? He's just successfully updated original digital measures. Honestly, I will applaud everything that happens this year because it's one of those years. So what I thought I would do before I kind of jump back to the slides is I would pause for a minute, and I'm going to ask that you sort of noodle around in there too and see if you just get some hands-on practice about entering something into the digital measures screen. Again, everyone's year looks different. Everyone's productivity looks different, but any form of university, professional, and community service, that should be brand new. Presentations are new. Just sort of get a feel for it. And then if, as you're going, you encounter a question like, you know, Kevin's question, is this professional service or community service? We can sort of brainstorm those answers together. But I think giving you a little time to practice will just kind of increase your familiarity and confidence exponentially. So we'll get started with that. And I'll give you just a minute or two to get started. And thank you, Kevin, for volunteering.
You're welcome.
Hey, Jess, glad to see you. Thank you. Thank you for being here today. I will also say that we have had some really entrepreneurial and kind of quick learning faculty members who actually by the end of our training got most of their data uploaded into the system. So I will not begrudge you if you want to be working on that as I'm talking. You can always go back and watch the video again. But if you kind of get going, I don't want to get in the way of progress.
Lisa, is there a category for departmental service? that I'm missing here?
At this point, we don't, I think on the SPA form, it doesn't specifically call out departmental service. So we just call that university
Under
service.
university.
Yep.
Okay.
But again, I recognize that every department kind of has its own norms. So we could certainly add that in the future. We're going to give you one more minute here, keeping in mind that even if you just get 75% of the information in, you can always go back and add to it, amend it, and revise it later.
So let me ask you a question. What does ex officio mean?
So ex officio, I'm going to sort of give you my layman's definition of it. So sometimes somebody gets put on a committee just by virtue of their role or capacity. So I think a good example would be like Dwayne Colthorpe, his support to the UCC. He's an ex officio member of the UCC. He's there by virtue of being associate vice president, but he's not, he doesn't have a voting role. Right, Dwayne serves the same role on the Tenure and Promotion Commission. Right, but that's, I think if you would know it if it was you.
Are we better off leaving it blank or putting no for random other stuff for which that doesn't really have any meaning?
I would just leave it blank. I would just leave it blank. So if like where digital measures is going to get kind of picky with you when you're doing an entry, it's going to get picky with you around dates. And the reason is because I'm going to show you how this sort of feeds into the system and pulls a report. It usually does that on an annual basis. So if there's certain information that you just sort of leave out, like let's say you publish to a journal that only publishes once a year, like it doesn't have a month, just fine to leave the month blank, but you want to make sure that you get the year so that it understands, does this particular record, does this piece of information count for this year, or does it count towards next year? I'm just sort of looking at your faces, so I'm trying to figure this out. Has everyone sort of at least gotten their hands dirty with a little bit of one entry? Anything that confused you, or you had a question, or you hit a snag as you were entering it? Like Kevin's question is really great about ex officio. Anything else you sort of wanted to talk about? Okay. So like I said, I hope as you kind of get in there and you're trying it out, that you're finding that it's largely pretty straightforward. That the kinds of data that the program is asking you for, it seems pretty clear. Again, I'm sort of giving everybody in this group permission to bypass anything about AACSB. That is really only for the School of Business, that has some very specific reporting requirements for accreditation. But otherwise, just do the best you can with the information that you have. Keeping in mind that these templates were created for faculty across disciplines. So there's going to be ways in which they are really an excellent reflection of what you need, but also ways in which they might be different. But really over the next, let's see, month and about 5 or 6 days, right? You'll be going into your digital records, your digital, what's this called? Digital measures site, and entering all of this data. But I also want to sort of walk you through the process of how you can verify the preloaded data that's already there on your behalf, right? So part of this process from a faculty perspective is putting in data like service, like presentations, exhibitions, patent applications, workshops attended, any of those screens that apply to you. But the second part of it is really making sure that the data we've put in on your behalf is accurate. So a couple of things that you might want to look at. So the first is the screen that's called scheduled teaching. What we did is we took all the information that came out of our database system called Colleague, and we've preloaded it into the system here. So you should see, if you had any courses on which you were the instructor of record, you should see a list of courses, number of students enrolled, and things like that. But I really want to sort of ask people to double check that that list is complete and accurate. Last year, we had a few hiccups with FYE. It had something to do with how there's a dual instructor. So if you don't see your FYE section mentioned, shoot me an email and I can make sure that that gets updated. Also, things like research students. So some departments, they sort of have one person as the instructor of record for research, and it may not be listed. But definitely sort of let me know if you're missing anything like independent studies or the sections look wrong. But again, you'll want to sort of go in there and make sure that that information is complete and accurate. And if it's missing, let me know. Another screen that you'll see is it's the advising record. So again, if you kind of go back to that main table of contents, you should see a screen called advising. I worked with ITS to pull a report of all of your assigned advisees from the fall. We pulled this report on a very specific date. I think we pulled it on September 25th. We know that advising numbers are kind of always changing, right? Students might, enroll or withdraw from the university. Students graduate. Students declare majors. But what we've decided to do is just try to get a kind of clear date in which all the numbers kind of come up on the same day. But again, if you see errors with that or it seems like it's missing, let me know and I can work on that. Because we want a kind of consistent number, that's a screen that I'll have to change for you. You won't be able to go in there and clean it up. We have some information about faculty, like where you earned your degrees, your personal contact information. But I'm guessing if you pull up those screens, you're not going to see everything. Those are things that you're welcome just to kind of fill out so that your record is more complete. So there's some stuff in there, but not quite everything. And the last thing, and I have a huge thanks to Jane for helping me with this, is I worked with Jane and we pulled all the records from Digital Commons. So if you published a monograph or a publication that was open access and appeared in Digital Commons where we keep those records, that there should be some information about that. But we also know that that system isn't perfect. It doesn't capture everything that folks did. It doesn't capture every discipline. But if you go to your publication page, you might see that there's some information there, but it may not be everything. In particular, it gets a little dicey with multi-authored publications. What I can pull into the system isn't perfect. So my sense is that some of that work will be done for you if you go into that site. But at the same time, you might have to enter additional information, including spelling out if you had any undergraduate co-authors or co-authors at other institutions. It doesn't come in completely and cleanly. But what I'm telling you is that you'll want to make sure that the things that are in your record that we tried to put in as a courtesy to save you some time and effort, that it's accurate and that we haven't sort of unintentionally introduced error or introduced incomplete information. But you should see that on all of your records.
So Lisa, on that advising thing,
Yep.
Did I hear you right that you want us to go through you instead of just fixing it if it's wrong?
Yeah, so the way that like there are a couple of screens here that are going to be fixed that you can't change yourself. That's
no, let me change it.
It will?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the yearly advising summary?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I could change it.
Okay, then go ahead and if you happen to know how many advisees you had in the spring, knock yourself out. The other thing is, I'd say we're doing the best we can this year. We know that faculty evaluation looks a little different this year. So if you can change it, go ahead and change it. But just keep in mind that whatever's in there was in there on September 25th. So if you make a change, Kevin, just update the date because we might want to go back and figure out why why the records are different. But if you can change it, fantastic. I didn't think you could.
Okay.
I think for things like teaching, you can't change things like the official enrollment number, because we do want to have some match data between what our official university records say and what's in digital measures, right? Those are things that we really want to make sure that they match. And if there's a problem, I want to be in touch with the folks at ITS to make sure that we can update the official record and colleague as well.
Yeah, and there's a little lock symbol right by those fields.
Yeah, so you should be able to see if it's locked, you just come to me. Jess is also a great resource to help in all kinds of ways, but we work together on those. So if there's an issue where something is locked, just let me know and I'm happy to change it. So I'm not sure how much, if you've gone in there and checked, have you seen anything that like you had to update or change as a preloaded data? Like I said, everyone's going to be a little different, but I just want to make sure that I sort of name those things and explicitly that you'll want to go through and double check.
I see on the teaching record that there's a place to upload syllabus. Is that something that is encouraged or required, or?
The thing is that this is still a little bit of a learning process for us. So at this point, you don't have to upload your syllabus, but you can if you want to. So this tool can be used in a lot of different ways. Some institutions actually use digital measures as part of the tenure and promotion process. So Trinity isn't there yet, right? We sort of have to think about that several years out. But I think what people like is being able to put all of this stuff in one place so that in the future, it might be that this is our tenure and promotion system, right? So like things like your course syllabi, all of that could be made available to the tenure and promotion reviewers. But at this point, it's just a data field that if you can add it, that's great. But it's not like strictly required. You'll also see, like, if you look at a publication, you also have the option of adding a post print. So this is something, again, that we might think about. I've talked to Jane about this in the future, that we might be able to kind of improve our digital commons records by making sure that this information can be kind of shared freely in both directions, right? That not only can we upload our digital commons records, but that we can extract the data and we can give Jane a more complete reference of everything that comes out in digital commons. The other thing that's nice about this screen is that if you go into a publication, you can actually sort of use the pull down menus, and you should see that there's different dates. So you can enter information like something that was submitted for publication, something that was accepted, or something that was actually published, because that's the kind of information you would give your supervisor on an annual basis, right? That you can sort of see the full pipeline of your scholarly trajectory. So you might this year have something that was accepted for publication, and then next year you could go into digital commons and you could update it as accepted for publication or published. But the system is sort of smart enough to kind of track your progress as you go. So any of those things, submission, acceptance, or an actual publication could be entered and tracked in digital measures. I'd say too that there's some really great screens on digital measures that faculty made great use of last year. So some of them are like research projects that are recently started or descriptive. And I'll show you sort of where all this information goes in just a minute. But there's a really nice way to kind of map out everything that you did. And so it gets tracked in the system, but also I'll show you how it will become visible both to you and your department chair during the evaluation process. So I'll pause there. So if anybody else has a question I know we're going through it kind of quickly, but my sense is that most of it will make sense until you hit a question or you hit something that's not exactly clear. And then I'm always happy to talk to you one-on-one. You know, you can always send me a screenshot, and we can kind of think through some of these tougher test cases. But otherwise, I think things should be pretty straightforward for most faculty.
Lisa,
Yeah,
I've got a question.
sure.
Actually, a couple here. One, that as we discussed this a little bit earlier, not today, but previously,
Yep.
the teaching category for librarians is
Yep.
altered significantly in terms of our SPA each year. You know,
Yep.
we've got several categories listed. I don't see any of those categories listed here at all, or even areas where we would add those in.
So I think there's, you know, we had talked a little bit about also the category of librarianship, right? That is something that's sort of really specific to your department. So I think for the first year, I think I might encourage you to think about like where those things might end up. So the way that Digital Measures talks about teaching when it says scheduled teaching, let's see, I think I'll look up, who am I looking? I think I might be looking, like scheduled teaching means like 4-credit teaching. It looks really specific. I'm wondering if this non-credit instruction might be a good category for librarians.
That might cover one aspect, but we've got a lot of other things that we usually consider each year.
Okay.
Management of library resources, budget sorts of things that really don't fall into the categories that are traditionally teaching
Okay.
For teaching faculty on campus. And I don't see any categories where those look appropriate here.
So I'm trying to think about this, and Chris, this might be a conversation that we have offline, and then you can kind of bring the final recommendation to your library colleagues, some of whom are here today. As a division, you might just sort of think about where that makes sense. I think what you said made good sense to me, that's sort of not traditional teaching. So I'm not sure that I would put it under teaching. I think you could consider this category of non-credit instruction. You might consider, what does this look like? There's this category called professional positions. You might consider using it here. Which, and again, I'll sort of show you where it goes on the report. You could think about it there.
I really, no, I before we go any further on that, I don't think that sounds very appropriate, because librarianship is the core of what librarians do as faculty. It shouldn't be shoehorned into some other categories.
Yep.
Oddly. It should be stated very clearly as a category along with teaching and mentoring. The same way the faculty handbook consistently talks about
Yep.
Faculty, teaching faculty, or librarianship.
Librarianship.
That's a separate category. So we really need, I think, a separate category here, or a longer list of things under
Yep.
teaching, mentoring / librarianship.
Gotcha. I think that's great feedback. And I think one of the reasons, and I shared this with you when we talked about involving the library in the pilot, is that those are the kinds of things we really want to think through as an institution, because that's sort of a way in which the out of the box report might not make sense at Trinity. We
Right.
might think through, I don't know how quickly I can get a screen like that added to this site if it's too late for this year. But maybe we might think about where to put it for this year, and then how to kind of make sure that our report is customized for the following year, so that it more accurately reflects what you do. Even some of those questions, like those pull down menus, trying to get as an exhaustive a list possible of what librarianship activities might look like. So I'm happy to kind of keep talking about that. And I will send a note as soon as I get off the call today to our consultant at the company Watermark, to see if there's a way to get that in for this year.
I would almost think they would have done something like that at some other institution, because
Yep. And again, sometimes you don't sort of know it's a question until it comes up. So hold tight on that, and we'll think about where it goes, recognizing that we might have an imperfect solution for 2020, but we will work towards something more perfect in 2021.
Hey, Lisa, I
Yep.
actually used digital measures at my last job.
Yep.
And I just pulled up my reports they generated, and I'll share
Yep.
these with you and Chris so you can see how we worked librarianship into that.
Awesome. That's great. That would be incredibly helpful, Colleen. Thank you.
One other question. So far, I'm seeing things for filling out forms. I assume, for instance, we've been directed by Dee to, have a page describing how we coped with COVID this year, obviously narrative.
Great.
Where
does that
Where do
go?
we put narrative sorts of things into
Gotcha.
this?
So really, and I think this is like, so the way I've encouraged faculty colleagues to think about digital measures as kind of a 1-2 punch. The first part is the database itself, right? So that's what we've been playing with so far. These are all of your data records. And then this has kind of a related part when we get to faculty evaluation. So we haven't gotten there quite yet, but I want to say that we're going to get there in just 1 second. So hold that thought. So this process here is a little separate from the evaluation process. So, but we are going to get there. Just in the interest of being thorough, I also wanted to tell you all that you have the option of uploading your publication data as a batch. So you can also pull something like from Google Scholar or another BibTeX file, and you can put all of that information in there at once. I always say for people who write one book every 5 years, it's probably not too tricky to enter all of your publication data if it's mostly in the form of books or monographs. But if you have a lot of articles and you have a lot of co-authors, many people found this more efficient. So especially the folks in physics and astronomy, for whom I learned it's very common to have 1,000 co-authors on a single journal article. They love the BibTeX option because they didn't want to go through and enter that. So I'm learning a lot about different disciplines in the process, but I want to say that this was pretty straightforward for a lot of people. But if you need help with it, just barter and I can definitely help you offline. You're not in the School of Business, so I'm going to breeze through these things. Great. So I noted we talked a little bit about how you can update your own records. And here I think, Colleen already knows how to do this. And Colleen, I'm glad that you've kind of outed yourself as a digital measures user. So you may end up being a good resource for your colleagues who might have questions.
It's been a few years. That's why I came for the refresher session.
It's good. I needed a refresher too. But the thing that's really, I think, helpful for people is to see everything kind of come together in what we call the annual activity report. So if you navigate right on your screen, you'll find that there's this tab called reports, and I'm going to run a report for you in just 1 second. But if you go to the reports tab, and the report we're most interested in is called Annual Activity Report. And you click that, what that's going to do is it's going to take all the data that you've entered into your page so far. We know this is going to be spotty, right? Because you've only been at this for 20 minutes, and maybe there's some partial records that Trinity has uploaded on your behalf. But you'll see how all of this information is kind of tallied into a clean and easy to read report. Engineers, you might see a couple other things on that list that really interest you. There's also some Abet reports in there too that will sort of take what you've put into the system and format it according to how Abet likes it, like an Abet faculty qualifications, or I think it's like an Abet CV or something like that. They have some really specific reporting requirements and it can pull it right out. But as you click that, you should see it should download automatically in your system. And you should see a, let's get this all right. Sorry, I'm also toggling between screens. A kind of very nice, clean Word document report of everything that's in the system. I'm going to run one here. If you have the option of putting the years in, right, when you do the report, right, it's probably asking you for a couple of parameters, right? Let's see. And we'll see how this looks. And like I said, this is sort of still a work in progress. Okay. So I'm going to show you what that report looks like. Has everybody been able to pull it? Hey, Richard, welcome back. So I'm going to share my screen. I have very generously volunteered my husband, Patrick Keating, to be our guinea pig for this session. Patrick's in a department where they don't use digital measures, so his information is really incomplete. But you can at least see how the system is pulling information out of the database and putting it into a really clean and easy to read report, right? So for example, you should have these really nice categories like teaching and mentoring, right? So we'll see things like that. We'll see if you have any research activity, if you have any university service. This is a really incomplete report, right? Because he's not actively maintaining this, but you should see this for yourself. And what I really like about this system is that if you haven't put any information in on a certain screen, it just doesn't show up on your report, right? So you won't see things like exhibitions or performances if you didn't have any. So it doesn't sort of highlight a sort of what's missing. It only sort of tells you what's there. Were you able to see your own reports? What I think folks like to do, and I'm going to show you how this kind of ties into the piece that Chris was asking about, how this ties into your evaluation. But it can be really helpful to run this report and take a quick look at it and see if it's complete or if you're missing things. So for example, you might run this report and you'd say, wait a minute, where are my publications? And then you'll think like, oh, I have to go back and check my publications. And 10 to 1, if it's not showing up on this report, it's because the date is out of the range that you've selected, right? So you might have entered a presentation, but perhaps you forgot to enter the year of the presentation. So it's not getting picked up by the way the report is filtered. Again, we're sort of seeing, I've seen these that can be anything from just a couple of entries, right? And some people have dozens and dozens of entries. It's just because faculty work takes so many different kind of shapes and sizes and incarnations that there's sort of no right number of entries. It's just a kind of accurate and complete reflection of whatever that looks like to you, right? We know that it looks really different for different people. The other nice thing that I really like about this comes out as a Word document too. So if there's things that you need to kind of tweak or change, I'm going to show you how to do that in a way that you can kind of pull this out in a way that works for you. But this is sort of the most ready-made way to see what's in the digital measure system, and then sort of how do we operationalize that. Okay. So I'm going to get back to my slides. Okay. So I told you that this was going to be a little bit of a 1-2 punch, right? So the first part is to look at the digital measures database, right? And to get all of your information kind of up and running. But the second piece, and this is where I think faculty are going to get really excited, is that digital measures works together with another product that we have called Workflow. And that's where it kind of takes the information out of digital measures and it really puts it to use for faculty evaluation. Colleen, did you use Workflow at your previous institution as well?
Not that I remember.
Okay.
But been a few years.
Totally fine. That's totally fine. If not, you'll be an expert in the next 20 minutes. So I think I screwed up there. I think the faculty submission deadline for the SPA, sorry for the typo, I think it's January 20th, Wednesday, January 20th. That hasn't changed at all. So this process is exactly the same. It just mirrors what we do in a new way. Okay, so let me hop over here. So there's kind of two ways to get to workflow. One way is a direct email. So my guess is that I think it was Monday, December 7th, you should have got an automatically generated email that said your evaluation is open, go in there and play with it. And some of you might have looked at it already, and some of you might have said, I'm not ready, right? I'm grading and I'm still thinking about getting through the end of the semester. The other way is to go under the tab on digital measures that says more, and to select the tab called workflow. And so if you log in there, what you should see is you should see a customized evaluation screen. And so everything is different in 2020, right? So instead of thinking about the kind of traditional SPA form that we've used in the past, this is where you're going to see the questions that Chris was talking about. So like, where do you put the narrative, right? These are sort of the second questions. But when you get into that form, you'll see a couple of things. So one is that you'll see this little icon. Do you see the PDF icon right here? You will when you get in there. That's going to be your annual activity report. So all of that data that you've entered into the system is going to automatically get passed along to your supervisor. And I know, for example, in the library, that looks a little different. So sometimes faculty, your work goes right to Chris. Sometimes it goes to sort of one other step in between, like it might go, I think, right to Benjamin or to B and a third person too. Is it Jane? Yeah. So, but all of that information that you've put into digital measures is going to end up in that report that you just saw. So you can always go back and make tweaks and changes. You just need to like refresh that report if you're going to go back and make tweaks and changes. I think that'll become more clear as you play with the system a little bit more. But for example, if you realized you forgot to add a publication, you just have to refresh the report so it'll pull those records into your records. So what we've done for 2020 is that we have built the digital measures page to look exactly like the memo from Dr. Jones about the materials that faculty members should upload for 2020. So that means it's a CV. The language of the memo says something like an abbreviated summary document of your accomplishments from the last year. Folks who are in digital measures might just say, my courses are already listed in my annual activity report, right? You don't necessarily have to be repetitive, but we just know that that document should be no more than 2 pages this year. It can have bullet points, it can have complete sentences. We've given faculty a ton of leeway to represent their work in the way that makes the most sense to them. This was like what Chris was talking about, the COVID statement. You update your COVID statement here. You'll also see that there's space to upload your course evaluations, any publications you had. And if you'd like to be considered for a Best of the Best award, and you're eligible to do so, you can do that right here. So this is sort of all in one place. So instead of sending an email to your supervisor or your department chair with all of these attachments, everything is going to get kind of put here in the system. Yeah, go ahead, Jane.
So I have a question. So under the upload any publications box, how is this different than in the data portion of digital measures?
So I think the thing is, I think it's a limitation of digital measures is that the attachments, for whatever reason, don't come through on the annual activity report. So annual activity report will list that you had a publication, but it doesn't know to drop it in here. And I know that that's incredibly annoying. And I already called them and complained and asked last year, and I will call and complain and ask again that faculty kind of hate doing things twice. So, but I just want to say that I know that that's a limitation of the system, which is why we prompt you to do it here. I think this should be pretty straightforward for most people. Again, this year, it's all about kind of bringing in an extra document. So you can bring in a Word document, you can bring in a PDF, you can use the format that kind of works best for you right here. So a few things that you should just know about this workflow process. Everything kind of mirrors the way we do things offline, right? So the process hasn't changed at all. We have amended everything to look like the university's faculty evaluation process for 2020. We use the exact same timeline. And what's really kind of a cool feature of this system, and as soon as you hit submit, your supervisor or your chair gets an email letting them know that the materials are uploaded, and they can go into the system and they can see everything you've uploaded in one place. And they'll use the same place to upload like a summary letter or whatever materials the chair has for you. And then once the chair kind of uploads that, it just gets routed right along the process. So it goes right to Dr. Jones. So there's no need to kind of keep attaching things over email or moving things in and out of a Google Docs folder. The whole system is kind of automated. And as soon as it's finished, it kind of moves it to the next step in the process. If you're listening and you're a faculty member in the School of Business, the process is basically the same. You submit something as a faculty member, it goes to your chair. After your chair, it goes to Dean Shearer, and then it goes to Dr. Jones. So it just sort of automates that process, and we can do that without having to send each other a lot of emails and a lot of email attachments. So this is the timeline. The timeline's exactly the same. You'll find it in the university's administrative calendar. So instead of submitting a SPA, there's no need to kind of do that. You will submit that workflow document that has the place to upload your narrative according to this calendar. So faculty and department chairs, your work is due on January 20th, right? I think department chairs, you submit things to the Vice President for Academic Affairs by March 2nd. And then the Vice President for Academic Affairs will meet with chairs and the dean in March and April. We're still figuring out that timeline, but that's what it will look like. So just a couple more thoughts, and then I'm happy to stick around and answer one-on-one questions. But otherwise, really what I wanted to do, and this is why I'll send you these slides today, there's a lot of places where you can get help if you need it. So you're welcome to go back and rewatch this video. You can look at today's slides. We've put a couple of resources online at Trinity, so you can visit this link. Again, you'll have it as soon as we get off the call today. Jess Bardo is here to help. And the way we wanted to be sort of as much help as we could is that we wanted to host a few of these like full-scale training sessions, but we also wanted to offer some drop-in help. So we have scheduled a few more training sessions in January when we come back. We're also offering some kind of drop-in office hours, including the day before the deadline, right? We know that a lot of folks sort of finalize everything right before it's due. We've blocked some time on the morning of January 19th where we can just kind of be fully available to help anyone who needs it. So we'd love to see you again if you have any questions. You can also send us an email. We're available for one-to-one help, but as much as possible, just because life is crazy, we really want to encourage you to come to those sessions we've scheduled. The final resource that I wanted to mention is Texas State. I'm going to give you the link. Has a really excellent digital measures website where it just kind of tells you step by step how to update records. Obviously, you'll have to make some changes, right? Like you're not going to talk to somebody at Texas State if you have a question about your records at Trinity. But frankly, I think the manual is kind of so good that I just didn't want to kind of recreate it from a Trinity standpoint. But if you're the kind of person who likes the linear step by step by step, where do I click, what do I do, that Texas State resources is just absolutely fantastic. So I'm happy to share that link with all of you. So just as a kind of final recap before you leave today. So what are you being asked to do? again, the first step is to go into digital measures and to get all of your records updated for 2020. Make sure everything is complete and accurate. Upload anything else that's there. Knowing that all of that stuff is going to end up in your workflow account. And then the second thing you're asked to do is to really kind of get all of those items into workflow, finish it up, get everything uploaded, and hit submit so that it goes on to your chair or supervisor by January 20th. So that's sort of the 1-2 punch, as I said. You sort of want to get everything into the database, and then you want to make sure everything else is there, complete with the attachments and the updated report. Yeah, that's it. So we've made it to the end of the slides. You are wonderfully patient online learners while I just talked at you for the last hour. But I'm gonna turn off the recording so that way